friend. Are you ready to move into a leadership position? Do you have interests and ambitions that you want to pursue, but feel like you don't know how to take that next step? Maybe you want to start your own coaching or consulting agency. I'm Mel, and I help educators define their career path through correct mindset, knowing your options, and getting prepared for your career transition. I will show you how to level up your leadership skills, share your expertise in a new way, create impact on a larger scale, and put your leadership in motion. As an educator for over 20 years, I started to feel underused and like I had more to give. I knew when the time had come for me to leave the classroom and affect change on a larger level. Now, I'm ready to help you determine where your talents and skills mesh with your passions and interests, put your leadership in motion, and move into that next phase of your educational career journey. Let me help you define your career path by having the right mindset, knowing your options, and getting prepared for that next leadership position. So power up and put your leadership in motion.
So we got these different contributions, and we started to find the right categories for them. So there's a chapter on leadership in the classroom, and some of that leadership comes from, we have a superintendent who contributed in that particular chapter. We have a building administrator, but we also have classroom teachers. And then we have a whole, chapter that's about relationships and how that's really kind of the heart of what your culture really is. And we have a chapter on kind of inclusivity, and being intentional with the environment. We have a chapter that is all around student-centered practices. One of the things that I think really is important when it comes to the culture of your classroom is the engagement of your teaching and learning. We tend to overlook that piece as part of culture. We think culture is something separate from teaching and learning, but it's not. So much of that teaching and learning drives the culture of your classroom. So there's a wonderful chapter there. We've got a whole section on trauma-informed practices and healing and understanding this, Gen Alpha and Gen Z. Amazing contributor, Dr. Chris Culver, who just
Chris, I
knocked
had
it
on the podcast.
He's amazing. Yeah, he knocked it out of the park there.
Science of kindness.
Yes.
Yes.
He's amazing. He's absolutely amazing. And then the last of those 7 elements is just building that culture of community. And there's some amazing pieces there. And then Katie and I each have a chapter that we kind of wrap up. And within each of the chapters, we write kind of around the contributors. So there's pieces that we're talking about, and then their elements will either support that or we'll be writing to set up what they are talking about. I think it's a unique book. I think it's a book that very much has a niche that's really important, and I think a unique take on leading in the classroom, focusing on culture instead of management. Again, super excited for how it turned out.
And it's more than just, and I think sometimes we get pushback, build a relationship. Have you tried the relationship? And they're like, and it teaches you not just to build a relationship, but how different personalities, because we are not carbon copies of each other. We know this.
Right.
There's artistry in teaching and in leading. And so we have to make sure that we are being authentic to who we are. And so it just has all of these different angles on relationships and how to do it and, how to set up your class. And it's just, I think it's a lifeline for teachers. And we're really proud of it.
When you were talking about student engagement being part of classroom culture, I've seen that a lot recently in a building that I'm in a lot. And I go into the classrooms. The students are never part of the learning. They're never hardly ever part of the learning. It's teacher-centered completely. And there's very little engagement. And so the kids check out and they talk. And then it becomes classroom management because you're trying to get them focused again instead of giving them the freedom to learn and the responsibility to learn and then the accountability of their learning. It's just kind of a free-for-all and not a lot of learning going on in there.
No, a whole lot of teaching, not a lot of learning.
Yeah.
And
Oh,
unfortunately, I think we all see that.
I don't even know that there's a lot of teaching going on because the teacher is busy managing the classroom at that point. They are constantly redirecting, and it's a whole other podcast. I'm just going to let that go for now.
Sure.
So definitely.
Yeah. But I think go ahead, Katie, go ahead.
Oh, I was just saying, we all know that our best classroom management tool is an engaged classroom. That full stop. And so we have to be staying relevant and staying up with our teacher besties and our kids. And so I'm always leery of someone who's like, I've been teaching for 4 years. I get it. I know how to do it. I'm like, no, none of us do. None of us do. And life is fun. Learning should be fun too.
Exactly.
And the kids should be hands-on. They should be in a Socratic seminar. They should be doing really cool things. And I think those teachers just don't know what they don't know. And so, you know, I'll have teachers come up to me after I have a session called Hook, Line, and Sinker, which is engagement strategies in the classroom. And it's one of my favorite sessions to do. And I'll have teachers get in line and be like, I didn't know. And I'm going to try some of your stuff. And then I'm like tagged on Instagram and when they're using some of these things, and it's great to see. I'm sorry, Dr. Pepper. Take over.
No, you're fine. No, I'm glad that you jumped in. I really am. I think so much of it, and actually, you know, this builds on what Katie just said. So much of the, well, I didn't know, you know, get stuck. And I think as administrators, we probably, you know, a lot of times fall into the same trap that the teachers fall into. You know, well, this is just, you know, the way we were taught or whatever. And sometimes administrators really aren't sure how to give good feedback. They're not sure how to help, you know, support a teacher. And I think when it comes to classrooms where there is a lack of engagement, and I work in a whole bunch of those schools too, I like to ask the administrator, you know, just think about who's doing the work. Think about who's doing the talking. You know, if the teacher's doing all the talking, there's probably not a whole lot of learning going on. And, you know, what are some ways that, you know, that you can engage your students in different ways? That chapter on student engagement has all kinds of great ideas and strategies, some from different contributors. I shared some, Katie shared some, where the whole idea is just think about how you can put that lift on the kids' shoulders. You know, as a classroom teacher, and not only should you not do it, but you don't have to show up and lecture for 45 minutes. I mean, holy moly, kids don't want that. I mean, our kids are used to 15 seconds on TikTok video now. And, you know, exactly. They scroll. If it's boring, boom, then they move on. But so do we. So, you know, we can't be boring our kids. We got to find ways to really make sure that they're engaged and like engrossed in their learning. Like, oh my gosh, this is what I want to have. I know, Katie, you told a story. I'm pretty certain it's your story, not one of the contributors in the book, how your kids the bell would ring and they're like, oh no, wait a minute. You know, I'm not ready to go. And, you know, that's when you've got engagement.
Yeah. And I tell teachers, like, they're kids. You can't let a 6-year-old, a 12-year-old, a 15-year-old hurt your feelings. Like they don't have a prefrontal cortex in which they even remember what they said 10 minutes ago. So, you know, I can have a kid come in and be like, I don't want to do English. It's dumb. And, you know, I'm like, you know, I've been waiting my whole life to get validation from a 12-year-old. They're like, huh? I'm like, take a seat. And then 50 minutes later, they're like, man, it was lit up in here. Like, we have to leave already. And like the same kid. And so, and so I think that's one of the best things you can hear as a teacher is like, it's time to go already. And which is something that I took to heart when I was in the classroom.
And I think some of the building that I'm referring to, it has a very high absentee rate, very high. Because the kids just don't want to be there because they sit and this is a block schedule. So they're sitting for an hour and a half. That's torturous for me. So I'm sure it's torturous for them too. And so they do not want to come to school sometimes. And there are so many good things about having your students engaged, not only for their learning and for your benefit, but also to get them there and keep them there.
Well, and brain research shows, and I don't know if this is in Culture First or in Untold. Now they're like merging in my brain, but kids cannot sit longer than their age in minutes. So I mean, we have to move them.
Exactly.
We have to, or you will have management issues, and so we have to be intentional about moving them. And it's I believe it was Marsha Tate who said it first: when the booty goes numb, the brain goes dumb, and that's true. That's true.
Yeah, exactly. So can you give us a little snippet of something that is going to make them want to go buy your book? I mean, we've talked a lot, just generalizations, but let's dig a little deeper here and give them some good stuff. So they're just like, oh my gosh, now I got to go hear the rest of the story.
Yeah. I mean, you heard Toothpaste, which you gotta, is one of the best little stories in there. And I follow her now, and just watching her in her classroom, because she was one of Darren's people. Not that we're not all people, but he was connected with her, has been in her classroom, and was like, we got to have her. And so now that I follow her, it's just fun to see the engagement of her kids. And she's on Instagram, and I don't know her handle, but she's really good. But I taught with a guy named Coach Terry, and we did a lot of team teaching together. And it's one of the last chapters, but he talks about, yes, he was a coach, but his main job was to engage students in history. And he did the coolest things. And we would do Socratic seminars together, debates against each other's classes. We would take the kids outside and learn MLA format with chalk on the sidewalks. He just had high expectations for kids. And we know that doing what's best for kids is having high expectations for them. Mm-hmm. And he was one of those where, like, he played like that. He's a big burly coach, but he was fantastic, is fantastic. He's still currently in the classroom at his job. And the kids would never think about stepping out of line, because Coach Terry loved them too much for that. Right. And so his chapter is probably one of my favorites, because it just brought me back to, I taught with him for 5 years before we went to different buildings. Actually, he went to Japan, and now he's back. He follows his boss of a military wife around, and she's the boss. And so he taught in Japan, and now he's back in the States. Just that we're all so different, and there's so many of those kinds of stories in there that you can take and pick from each one and put it in your tool belt. And I love that for our teachers.
Yeah, I'll give you a couple quick ones that I think are more than worth the price of admission. One would be, so there's an amazing high school English teacher at a school here in Omaha, Nebraska, where I live now. And I've been working with this particular school, Papillion La Vista High School, for a handful of years. And Lori Boudreau is the name of the teacher. And Lori wrote an amazing section. It's interesting when I asked Lori to write for this book, I've been in her classroom, I don't know, a couple of dozen times at this point in time. I had been in her classroom just before I asked her, and she had this amazing, really different room arrangement. And I'm like, okay, so room arrangement. Here's a big piece that makes a difference in the culture of your classroom. And Lori certainly talks a little bit about room arrangement, but more importantly, she wrote a whole piece on building trust in the classroom. And, that two-way trust and how important that is, and what she does from the very beginning of her school year all the way through to make sure that she's building trust. I think that's one of the most important elements anyway. And Lori just absolutely did a wonderful job of sharing that. The second one I'll share is somebody that I worked with. And, when we were getting late in the process on this book, we started looking at who are we missing? Like, what areas have we not gotten to? And there were two. One, we didn't have anybody who taught in a virtual classroom. So we leaned in and we connected with an amazing teacher named Baird Swedman, who is a teacher in Oregon. I've done some work with his assistant superintendent, and so that was a nice natural connection. But we also hadn't touched special education. And so often, I think special education gets overlooked.
Yes,
and we have Andrea Bittner, who contributed, from the EL perspective. But we really needed somebody who was just crushing it in terms of building culture in their classroom as a special educator. And I had a department chair when I was a building principal named Tanya Fallum, who is just a rock star. Tanya really hit it out of the park, talking about getting real life connections into your classroom. And, as a special education teacher, engagement was an even bigger challenge often for her. And so finding as many real life connections as she could for her students on a regular basis. And man, her room was across the hall and down one door from the office. So I was always very close to where Tanya was. Loved being in her classroom, seeing the learning that was happening there. And man, what she shares and what she talks about with how you get those real life connections into your classroom is super, super powerful. So those two as well, worth the price of admission without question.
Wonderful. Wonderful. So let's talk about how my audience can get your book, why they should buy your book, all of the things. First of all, tell us why. Why should we buy your book? Why should new teachers, why should new and aspiring principals buy your book?
Well, I think that all of these classrooms are very different that we have pieces of in our book. And it never would have been able to get out otherwise. Like they would have been teaching in their buildings, and Darren and I know about their rock star status, and we know. And so all of these teachers can take pieces of these stories and pieces of these, how to create this lightning in a bottle, this classroom culture, this relationship engagement, and make it work for them at the pool this summer. And they can get it on Amazon. I think you can get it at Road to Awesome. And it's Googleable. Mm-hmm. And we just
it's available at Barnes and Noble. You can get it at Barnes and Noble.
And you can reach out to us. Like it is an honor to mentor teachers all over the nation. So if you have a question, you can reach out to either one of us and we will get back to you. Or you want to be connected with one of these teachers in that book and ask more questions, we will connect you. And it's really a project that we put kind of our heart and soul into.
Yeah. And I'll build on that a little bit and say, the big reason that you want to have this book. So if you're, I'll speak straight to the administrators. Why do you get this book for your entire staff? Because you want to see kids being as successful as they possibly can be in the classroom. And when your teachers put culture first, that's what you tend to see happen. And this is an opportunity. I think this book it's written for the early career teacher, but it's also written for the mid career, for the latter career teacher that maybe you just need that little bit of a spark, that little bit of a reconnection with what it is that like inspires that passion that you have for kids and for teaching and learning. And we all need that little something sometimes to pick us up. And this is a book that again, we're proud of it for a dozen different reasons. One that we haven't mentioned, just to be able to shine a spotlight on 24 absolutely amazing educators who normally would not have the spotlight. I think that alone is worth checking it out, because these are the people that are in the trenches. They're doing the work every single day. They're not necessarily out there blowing it up on Instagram or on LinkedIn or whatever, saying, oh, look at what I did here. They're just grinding every single day, doing amazing work on behalf of kids. And that's the kind of book when you pick it up and you start reading it, you're like, wow, I had no idea. This is so cool. I love what Stacey Nation, talked about here. I love what Bradley Skinner talked about there. I love what, just on and on and on. the stuff from me and Katie, it's really good. I won't try and be coy with that. It's really good. The 24 contributors, that's why you buy the book right there.
And you can pick from the different areas and make it fit to your classroom or to your building and make it your own. So it doesn't have to be every single thing in there. It needs to be something that works with your context in your building or your classroom. So great. Yeah. All right, guys. Well, tell us, Katie, we're going to go with you first because Darren told us we should at the beginning. So tell us how we can connect with you.
When the legend speaks, you listen.
You know it. I was thinking I think it was Wayne's World. We're not worthy. We're not worthy.
Mel, you have no idea what you've unleashed. I'm never going to hear the end of this from Katie. Never.
I'm just trying to help you out, Darren.
It's too good. It's too good. It's too good to let go. You can look me up on katiekinder.com. You know about that teal glasses lady. That's me. I have been branding myself. I think it was Darren who really kind of helped me start. Yeah. In 2023, he's like, you should throw out fake ones. Yep.
Wonderful. Hey, mine are teal too. You just can't see it as much.
So I throw out these fake glasses to my audiences, and then they can hashtag and they can win a book. And so I had a lady in North Carolina, and I've told this to some audiences. She was like, I couldn't remember your name, but I remember that you were that teal glasses lady. So I put that teal glasses lady in Google, and you came up. I was like, what? Have I arrived? And it's really funny. And you can find me at Untold Teaching Truth on Instagram, Katie Kinder 1 on Twitter /X. And it's super cringy to say, but I'm Googleable. Maybe not as Googleable as Dr. Darren Peppard, but I'm getting there.
Hey, we're all getting there. One of these days we will be worthy.
Maybe.
That's funny.
All right. Dr. Peppard, tell us how we can get in touch with you too.
Yeah, so the easiest way to get in touch with me, if you go to roadtoawesome.net, that's the website. That'll get you, everything that you need to know there. There's a contact us button on literally every page. There's a page for the books, all the books that we've published, the whatever number we're at right now, 35, 40 books or whatever the number is at this point. If you're a social media person and you want to connect with me on social media, I'm Darren M. Peppard, literally on every platform. Mm-hmm. So I've made it real simple. Just look for Darren M. Peppard and you will find me on social media. I'm sure I'm Googleable as well. Maybe if you Google that Road to Awesome guy, I don't know if that would come up.
We should do a real live check. I bet you anything it comes up.
Yeah, I'm pretty sure I Googled Road to Awesome before, and
I'm certain that it would. So, but yeah, that's the easiest way to get in touch with me, or you can just email me, Darren@roadtoawesome.net.
Wonderful. And I will have all of that information in the show notes. So my audience, they won't have any trouble finding you guys or your book because I will put the link to that in there as well. This has been a great conversation. I am so happy to have two guest hosts on here at one time. This is wonderful. So thank you both
Dr.
so
Mel.
much.
We heart you. Thank you for having us.
Yeah, this was awesome. Thank you, Dr. Mel.
Absolutely. I am so glad you guys were able to come on, and we had a little trouble connecting and getting all of our calendars in alignment, but it worked out, and this is the best day to do it. I know we tried a couple weeks ago, and I was actually glad that it didn't work out because I wasn't quite in my apartment yet, and I was still working from a different location and not a good location. And so it
was fate to do it today.
Yeah, it was.
God works out the details.
Mel, I'll share this too.
Works out the details.
Yeah, I'll share this too, just really quick. Another way to get in touch with us, if you happen to attend the Innovative Schools Summit in Nashville this summer, Katie and I will both be there.
Oh.
And we just found out we'll be presenting together at the AMLE conference in Indianapolis in November. So there you go. There's a couple opportunities to see the two of us in the same place.
Wow. Yes. Yes. And I will link those dates as well, and how our guests are not our guests. You're my guest. How our audience can connect with you through that. So that's wonderful how they can register and and go to those conferences, because I love conferences. I love going. I love the atmosphere. I love the learning. It's, I'm a PD junkie. So
there you go. Yeah. Come see us and get yourself some of those teal glasses.
Woo!
Yeah. Awesome. I got just a little on mine, but it's kind of hidden. So. All right, guys. Thank you so much for being on. And for the rest of you, thank you so much for joining me and my guest today. I will see you back here same time, same place next week. Bye-bye.
Bye.
See you.